Hello, and welcome to Oh Wondrous World, Ross Gay and Aimee Nezhukumatathil in Conversation, a program in the all-virtual 2021 Virginia Festival of the Book. I'm Jane Kulo, Director of the Virginia Center for the Book, a program of Virginia Humanities. Thanks for joining us. A couple of notes before I hand the program over to our speakers. Please share your questions using the Q&A tab on Zoom. This event has optional closed captioning, which you can turn on and customize by using the closed captions tab at the bottom of your window. If you haven't already read today's books, we hope you will. For details about how to buy them from our booksellers for this event, M. Revac and Company and Barnes & Noble, visit vabook.org, where you can also explore our full schedule and watch past events. While you're there, please consider making a donation to support the festival's ongoing work at vabook.org/give. Many thanks to our sponsor for this event, Westminster Canterbury of the Blue Ridge. And thanks to our community partners for sharing information about today's event. The Bridge Progressive Arts Initiative, Fall for the Book, Montclair Literary Festival, the Muse Writers Center, Piedmont Environmental Council, and Wild Virginia. Now I'm pleased to introduce our speakers. Ross Gay is the author of 4 books of poetry: Beholding, Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude, Bringing the Shovel Down, and Against Which. Ross is talking today and reading from his collection of essays, The Book of Delights, and he teaches poetry at Indiana University. Aimee Nezhukumatathil, author of World of Wonders, In Praise of Fireflies, Whale Sharks, and Other Astonishments, is also the author of 4 books of poetry, including Oceanic, winner of the Mississippi Institute of Arts and Letters Award. She is a professor of English and creative writing in the University of Mississippi's MFA program. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Ross and Aimee. It's all yours.
Thank you. Hi, Aimee.
Hello. I think they just unmuted me, so I'm going to go back down and mute myself. This is
Okay. Okay, cool. So we're going to read for we're both going to read for like 10 minutes, and then we'll have a conversation, and maybe we'll be able to also kind of get to some questions and stuff too. But yeah, it's really good to be with you all for the Book Fest, and with Aimee, of course. It's good to be with you, one of my dearest friends and fellow travelers in this thing. So I'm going to read a couple. So I'm reading from this book called The Book of Delights, and this book was I wrote this. You know, the way the book kind of came to be, I was having a nice day. I was in the midst of a delightful kind of moment. I was actually walking through a field of like sunflowers and to a castle where I was going to get lunch for free. So it was a good day. And I was like, oh, this is delightful. So I thought, yeah, I should write a little essay about this delightful feeling. The word delight came to me, and it was not necessarily a word that was sort of part of my normal lexicon. And then shortly after that, I thought, boom, I thought, oh, you should do that every day for a year. Write an essay about something that delights you for every day for a year. So that's what this book is. You know, and then I gave myself these simple rules, and one was do it every day, which I did not quite, but I did it most days. And then it was to write them by hand and to write them quickly. So I drafted all these things in 30 minutes. And the book, it's 102 essays, and they have some of the qualities of rapidity, you know, kind of quickness. But I'm just going to read like 2 or 3. I'm going to read for 10 minutes and then turn it over to Aimee. And this first one is called, and so they're all dated. So I'm going to read them, a couple from right around this time. It's a beautiful time of year. Babies, seriously. This is from March 16th. Today, while I was reading on the airplane with my knees smashed into the seat in front of me, a toddler toddled down the aisle in her pink onesie with the panda head hood. She was a remarkably postured little creature, like so many of her ilk, and bold, toddling toward the back of the plane in front of her mother, who was doing a good job of letting the tot explore. But as the baby got near my row, the man in front of me with his sleeping mask slid up on his forehead, widened his eyes and smiled manically, making kissing noises at the baby. He spoke a language I didn't understand, but the sounds he was making to this baby, which with his traveling companions became a chorus of sounds, made me wonder if baby talk is a universal or universalish language. For I understood exactly what they were saying. And how nice of God to make this exception around the language adults speak to babies. Anyhow, the man was so enchanted with this petite creature with wisps of hair feathering north and big eyes that he couldn't resist first poking the child's tummy before scooping the squirt onto his knee, where she stood, bouncing and grinning, looking back to her mom, who looked a touch nervous, before being set free and retreating back down the aisle and returning again, upon which the choir of babbling would commence, everyone reaching toward the munchkin. Picture the halftime show at a basketball game when the mascot bazookas t-shirts into the crowd, scooping her up and again, and I was so flabbergasted by the endurance of love and delight incited by this child, to whom I presume none of these people was related, a love and delight that seemed analogous to the one that makes some people struggle not to eat the faces of babies, that I found myself, despite the very engrossing book I was reading about something horrible, laughing out loud and babbling with them and convinced again of something deeply good in us. And I'm gonna read two more, I think. This is called My Life, My Life, My Life, My Life in the Sunshine. It's sunny here. Which delight landed in my lap from the open window of a passing car, and is simply, although the plaintive synth chords and watery triplets betray somewhat the simplicity, an argument for the sunshine, which, true, maybe I am the choir, but I like the argument for its simplicity, which is that everybody loves it, and everybody loves it, and folks get brown in it, and folks get down in it. And most convincingly to me, and that which elevates it to the metaphysical, even the holy, just bees and things and flowers. And then I'm just going to read this one, which is from, that one was from March 20th, and this one's March 21. I'm on a roll here. These days I had them every day. Decent ones every day, I should say. Incorporation. This is called incorporation. I am what you might call an enthusiastic gesticulator, verging on the bombastic. Lots of pointing and conjuring and whacking. Sometimes maybe even too much, as the kid at the salad joint probably thought when I asked if I could sub out the roasted chicken for some sesame tofu. And he teased me by saying, with a very straight face, "No, you may not," before grinning, which made me smack the sneeze glass a little too hard with laughter. Also, usually with laughter, striking my own body, most often the region near my heart, which I've only just identified as a significant place to smack with glee. I only mention this to confirm that I present no particular gestural void or vacuum. I am not in this way, in other words, in need. And so imagine my delight when today, after chatting with my friend Walton for about an hour, I found myself a few hours later in another conversation, embodying some of his elegant hand gestures, the emphatic hand swimming through the air, or pointing and plucking at something simultaneously, or always some kind of beckoning. I've been told there is a term for this among behavioral psychologists, which foregrounds the behavior as opposed to what intrigues me, which is the fact of our body's ubiquitous porosities. How so often, and mostly unbeknownst, our bodies are the bodies of others. Thank you. And Aimee, I'll turn it over to you for now.
Woo! Thank you so much, Ross. That was so beautiful. I love that one with all the gestures. Hello, Virginia, and I'm so glad to be with you on my Only Things. I wish we were there in person together. I'm coming to you all live from Oxford, Mississippi, And same thing, I'm going to read about 10 minutes and then Ross and I will have a chat together. And what I want to say about this book, I'm going to be reading a selection from World of Wonders, which just came out with Milkweed this past 2020. And then I'm going to read something brand new. I think I've only read it once before. And it's for a column that I have with Orion Magazine, where I used to be poetry editor. And now I'm writing a food column for them called A Taste of Wonder. So you'll get something somewhat brand new and a little something from World of Wonders. Now, World of Wonders is a collection of 30 plants and animals that I just love so much and never get tired talking about or learning from, watching, observing, hearing, that kind of thing, reading about, that kind of thing. And it started from this kind of wish list of mine of 200 plants and animals. So I really, really whittled it down. And let me see here. And it's really, so it's about, they're very short pieces. And I would say there's about 70% kind of observation or research, and then 30% of my own, or maybe about 40% of my own kind of snippets of my life thrown in there as well. And it was really important to me to have illustrations in it. And then specifically, I wanted to have an Asian American illustrator for it. And this woman who did all the drawings for the cover and for the inside of the book is named Fumi Nakamura. And, I just never saw people with last names like ours in the nature books that I read so much growing up. So I'm so pleased to have Nakamura and Nezhukumatathil on this book because, it's 2021 and I think there's more room for people of all backgrounds at the table of nature writing. So I'm going to read a little snippet of an essay called The Narwhal, which when I started this essay, it was very rare for people to know what a narwhal is. And now I think you can get like narwhal socks, stuffed narwhals, narwhal backpacks, that kind of thing. But hopefully there's still a little bit of wonder and magic about these animals. All right, the narwhal. Narwhals are found mainly in the Arctic Ocean, but occasionally a small pod of them wanders into a Canadian fjord. Now, the word narwhal comes from the Old Norse word nar, which means like a corpse, due to the distinctive mottled skin that looks like the spotted skin color of drowned sailors. Narwhals don't have a dorsal fin, and they have vertebrae in their neck that allows them to do a whale of a double take. The only other whales that share these unique traits are beluga. Now, narwhals eat cuttlefish, cod, and armhook squid. Nothing too disturbing, right? But the way they eat can be alarming. A narwhal will swim up to its food very stealthy-like, slow and steady, opening its mouth and inhaling like the world's scariest vacuum. And then, in one giant and powerful gulp, it will swallow the unsuspecting animal whole. Now, did I mention that narwhals like to swim upside down? Can you imagine seeing a 3,000-pound narwhal sidling up to you upside down and slowly starting to open its mouth? Just who are these toothy creatures' predators? Orcas and the occasional polar bear sometimes hunt baby narwhals, but when orcas can go after an entire pod, the narwhals just dive, 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 dive. They can survive at almost 5,000 feet below sea level. And yet, narwhals are classified as almost threatened because humans hunt them for their teeth and valuable fat supply. One afternoon in Kansas, my sister and I were riding the school bus back to the doctor's quarters. As we neared home, I saw my mom in our driveway unpacking groceries from the car. A chunky blonde boy on the bus asked if my mom was Chinese. When I said no, she was actually Filipino, he flipped his eyelids out. And I don't know if kids still do this anymore. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like they flip their eyelids out. Anyway, it was so gross. I cringed and groaned. I could still picture the greasy, dark, who knows what jammed under his fingernails. I could still see his belly hanging over his Wrangler jeans as he chortled at his own joke. And then, as if flipping his eyelids wasn't enough, he tugged at the skin at the corner of his eyes and pulled it to his ears. I bet she's Chinese. Her eyes don't even look like yours. Ice, snow, the white plastic of the milk jug she was carrying in each hand as she smiled at the bus, scanning the faces of all those staring kids for her own. I wanted to dive deep, deep, deep into the darkest of seas so no orcas could find me. I had no sword, and worse, no sharp tongue with which to sass the sky back. Instead, I just stared straight ahead, gathered up my books, and left without saying goodbye to poor Mr. Johnson, the kindly bus driver. I'm going to stop that one for now, but I'm going to read that second piece, brand new, on chocolate. Let me see here. And again, this is for Orion Magazine, and it's for my column, A Taste of Wonder. So each issue, I'm going to focus on something kind of that made me wonder about its origins, or wonder about kind of how it's made, or wonder about all the different ways we can eat it. This month is chocolate. I just finished one on the dandelion, and we'll see where that goes. And this starts off with an epigraph from Lucille Clifton. And it goes, the plainest things it seems to me are filled with wonder. Let me do that one more time. The plainest things it seems to me are filled with wonder. Some people are perfectly fine without it. My friend Ross jokes that he can go for months at a time and not even notice. I too felt like that about chocolate. That is, until the pandemic started. When schools and restaurants first shut down last year, my family stocked up on essentials as if planning for a hurricane or tornado. When I ordered groceries online from our local supermarket, I threw in a couple of travel-sized bottles of hand sanitizer. It's all I could find in those frantic early days. And then I also threw in a Tony's Chocolonely chocolate bar just because it made me feel happy, and I confess, seeing the word lonely on the bright red wrapper made me feel a little less lonesome. Things you can buy online made of chocolate: a camera, a teapot, a key, golf ball, a complete toolkit, hammer, wrench, saw, pliers. You could buy food that looks like it was dipped in it: an orange, a piece of toast with egg and bacon on top, complete with a chocolate fork and knife. And you can buy a box of Brussels sprout shaped chocolates painted green. Also green, a chocolate Yoda. There's chocolate chess sets, a watch, handcuffs, a gun with chocolate bullets, a high-heeled shoe, a rose, bunnies, of course, a pair of lips, and for someone truly out of this world, you can buy a whole chocolate solar system of planets, minus Pluto, much to my chagrin. In Austin, Texas, I'm particularly fond of Madhu chocolates, who source their cacao from the Tumaco region of Colombia and then roast, crack, winnow, grind, flavor, temper, and warp all their chocolate bars by hand. My father says their masala chai dark chocolate reminds him of the chai he used to drink back in Kerala. This past summer, we lost my maternal grandmother, the greatest cook I've known. Doesn't everyone feel the same way of their grandmothers? And because of the travel restrictions, none of us were able to attend her funeral in India. I won't pretend eating chocolate helped our grief across the ocean in any way, but I wonder about the families all over the planet unmoored by so much separation these days. When we eat chocolate, our brains release dopamine as a way to activate pleasure and pleasurable feelings. And someone somewhere once imagined whole planets of chocolates, maybe to soothe the loneliness bubbling up. Some heavy days, it feels like we could all use a universe of chocolates, something to help ease our losses, big and small. Maybe just a few stars or a nebula for the graduations, weddings, births, and funerals we've missed. Something to conjure up a taste of India here in northern Mississippi. Go ahead, add another couple of chocolate bars to your cart. I'm gonna end there and then invite Ross to come on back.
It's great. It's beautiful.
Thank you, dear. I'm so happy to be chatting here with you again.
Yeah, same here. Same here. As you were, I'm here in Philadelphia to work on a project, and as you were reading, I was hearing I think there must be like a school nearby, and I was hearing kids yelling, and I was like, oh, I love that sound. I was like thinking, because one of the things that's so beautiful about your work, and I think we're in this kind of wheelhouse of work together, is that it just tunes you up a little bit to what makes you feel like, oh, right, that's a thing that is just such, it brings to me like delight. The sound of like the racket of kids, like,
Yeah. And for a long time, I still don't hear it very often now, but for a long time last year, I couldn't hear that unless it was the racket of my own kids upstairs or something, but that playground noise. Yeah, I miss that.
Yeah.
I have lots of questions. I always have lots of questions to ask you, whether or not we're on Zoom or not. So let's start out with, can we talk about, we'll probably talk about the pandemic at some point before this is done, but can we talk about the act of writing, just something new, just something brand new? Like, I'm always curious, something I don't think I've like asked you in any kind of official formal way, but when you sit down at your desk and you're writing something, I know you're working on something new right now, but if you did not have like a project in mind, like you're not like, oh, I got to work on my book, or I got to work on this thing that's due, how do you begin? How do you start? And how has that changed in the pandemic? Has that changed since you were, first starting out, that kind of thing? Like, how do you, when you have that glorious snowfall, that white page, that white screen, where does Ross Gay begin?
Yeah, it's so neat. I think that's a really good question. And I think it's a fun conversation, because we're such like sort of like deep contemporaries. Like, we're basically the same age. We're both born in 1974.
You're older.
By like what, 4 months or something?
I still count you older, the old man.
I'm older. I'm your elder. So, watch how you talk to me. But so we, and we both have, books, and I think you published your first book a couple years before my first book, but we've been kind of like moving along, and then we both published a book of essays kind of around the same time. And so one thing that I realized as you were asking the question, I did sort of think, oh, whereas before writing the Book of Delights, for sure, I think I thought of like books were just sort of things that gradually accumulated over time, and then you sort of shaped them up into a thing. So that's sort of how it was. So for my first 3 books, I think. And then I think it was, around that time where I was thinking of a number of things, but one of the things that I was thinking about, with the Book of Delights, it became like the thing of like, oh, this is like a book thing, like a whole book idea. And I had been like, when I started that book, I had been like at the point of like starting to, trying to putting together a proposal and trying to sell a book, so I had been thinking of it in that way, but now it is not at all. Whereas it just wouldn't even go through my head. Now it's very much part of my thing where I think, oh, that's a book. That's a book. And I think that's maybe a different, and I will say generation. Like generationally, I feel like we came up in a time as poets where you didn't necessarily have to have a project, like a book project.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's a little bit of a different, we're in a little bit of a different moment in terms of even the way that I hear our students talk all the time is like, what's the project and what's the thing.
Yeah.
But now I feel like I often am writing things that are just like whatever, but I'm also way more acutely attuned to the fact that things might be a bigger thing. What about you?
I think, you could have answered the same thing for me. It definitely, I think sometimes my students get freaked out when I say, with poetry in particular, I'm just trying to write a poem. If there's no kind of larger goal in mind, or there's no even manuscript I see shaping when I sit down to write a poem.
Yeah.
But lately, when I sit down, and I don't know if it's pandemic, I think a little bit before that too, when I sit down, about a year ago, I wrote something on snakes that nobody has seen, not even you. And I show you a lot of my work.
Yeah.
I wrote something on snakes, and I was thinking, maybe do I have the capacity to write a lot about snakes?
Right.
Or is it veering into something else? Is snakes just like an exit ramp on a longer kind of highway that I don't even know yet, that kind of thing. But it did make me pause. Whereas before I would just be like, I'm writing about snakes next. And then the next day it'll be something, I'm going to write about peaches or whatever, that kind of thing. So I don't know if that's good. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing though, on the one hand, it helps me get organized a little bit.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I don't know, maybe I'm swooning too much over those early days where I could just write and not be, I don't know if it's a negative thing, but I think maybe in some ways possibilities. I'll tell you this. I will say that what I like about it is I think possibilities are bigger and open to us, to not just us, but to people of all backgrounds now than they ever were before. I think so. That's one huge positive out of it. Like if I wanted to, I could say like, I'm going to be writing about snakes, and most probably could get a book out of it, in I don't know what genre, but whereas I think, maybe 20 years ago, I might have had limits. I don't know. I might have had limits, or just saying like, I'm just trying to churn out one poem about a snake at a time, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good thing for contemporary poetry, contemporary writing in general, is that doors have been opened now in ways that they were closed to us.
Yeah.
When we first started out.
Yeah. I think it's also, when you were talking, I was thinking, oh yeah, I also, something that I'm more like acutely aware of being interested in now, is so it is doing stuff that I just don't know how to do,
Yeah.
That's just so fun. And I kind of feel like when you're kind of a younger writer, younger, part of the thing is like just trying to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
And part of what I think is really interesting and moving and exciting, and actually sort of an ethical interest, I think, is that trying to figure out how to not be able to do it and do that, so that once, because I can hear myself sometimes be like, blah, 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 book idea. Oh, that's a hit, and I don't, like, that's not really that interesting to me, actually.
Yeah, I know.
What's interesting to me is like, the beautiful thing that you can't conceive of, you know, that you can't make actually. I'm way more interested in the thing that you can't make. And that when it comes out, it's actually like, man, wow, you made that thing, huh? Wow, wow. Yeah, which is a puzzle to me. Like one of the funnest puzzles to me is to be along with my student, with the folks that I study with, trying to figure out how to both set up and make, you know, kind of co-conjure the space of doing things that none of us could imagine ever having done before.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's where I think that sweet spot of magic and learning and opening doors to possibilities in a writing space where, like, you know, led by a person of color, but we're all in this together, you know what I mean? I know I say it and I've heard you say it, and people who know us know that we truly, truly mean it. The best workshops are for you and I think I'm confident in saying, is not the ones that, oh, we happen to be writing on our own a lot, you know, we got X number of pages. It's the ones where I'm learning the most. We're refiguring things out together, you know, and moving forward together on this, and taking the 12 of us all together, you know, and doing something in our work that hadn't been done a semester ago, you know, that kind of thing. So to me, that's like the excitement of living, breathing, teaching in this world now, is making space. I'm not interested at all at people bowing down to me, revering me, scribbling down everything I say as word. I think that a lot of that was, in some ways, how creative writing workshops are run before. I want to make things with my students. I want to help them envision worlds and possibilities that people had said is not possible before, you know, that kind of thing. I want to make that possible for all of us.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's the funnest thing. And it's the funnest thing to sort of be, I mean, you know, it's fun because in part, there's many reasons that that's fun to me. One was that, and I don't know if you know this, but, you know, I was kind of like sick of teaching at like 5 or 6 years ago. Is that right? Or maybe 7 years ago. I was like, fuck it, I'm done. Like,
I know, you told me.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get out of this. And it was tied into many things. And you know, like, and I didn't quite have the language for it, and I still don't quite have the language for it. But among the many things it's like this whole kind of the push toward what you're talking about, toward mastery and a kind of expertise and a kind of elevated, like the kind of, you know, despite all the rhetoric, despite all the workshops, despite all the everything, the deep impulse of the university is excellence and individuation and elevating one above the others and accomplishment and achievement and all the rest. And and part of that whole kind of, you know, mechanism is all that evaluation and all that assessment and all that grading and all that blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, and I didn't have the language for it, but I was just like, I always feel horrible. Like not always and totally, you know, I've learned from enough therapy that when you say always, it's like you're being like your child self. So I didn't always, sometimes it was fucking awesome too, you know, but I often, you know, I often would leave, say, a graduate workshop where people were really like, really deeply loving this stuff and invested in a kind of, in their work, trying hard. And I felt like those classes were always, I left exhausted and I left kind of sad so often and worried, you know, worried and nervous that I was never doing anything good enough, you know. And, you know, that's my own thing I got to deal with, you know, but also I think the context of the classes, that's the point, to make you feel like you're never doing anything good enough.
Yeah.
That's school, actually. That's what school's for, to make you feel like you're never doing anything good enough. So when you're in a classroom in this different kind of way, I'm going on and on, sorry.
No, that's fine.
But you can't stop me because I'm your elder. But you know, but then when we start to teach in these ways, like you're talking about, like you don't want anyone to come like sit at your feet. It's like, well, what can we work on together? What can we make beautiful and get lost in together? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly it. And I remember those conversations too, where I think the both of us at some point, that was just before I came here to Mississippi. I was at kind of a breaking point with my own teaching and frustrations with my former university. Um, but then I realized, like, we have the power to change this model, and I think it's just been so exciting since. I think what we're seeing now, we just came off of and probably you all too, reading applications for the next round of MSc students, and it's so exciting. It's so exciting to just to see, oh, I get to make things with these people again, coming soon. And yeah, it's not like, oh, these get to be my disciples. That's not at all what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, oh, who do I get to make and learn from? That kind of thing. So yeah.
Really lucky.
We have a lot of questions here. I realized I didn't even take a look through, but let me see here. There's a couple questions. Maybe let me see if I can combine both of them from Monica. So Monica's asking me, how did you narrow down this kind of 200 numbered list of creatures and plants? How did you do that? And then also, though, in Book of Delight, she said you made her cry. But do you find that delightful things also make you cry? So I don't know if there's an exact way that we can answer, but I'll answer mine quick first, and then I'll hear from you too. Anyway, okay, so it was easy. The litmus test I had for my 200 list is, what are the things that I felt confident about, that I'd never was bored myself of learning about. So when I start an essay, when I start a poem, I start with an image. When I start an essay, I start with a question. And each of the things that are now in World of Wonders, I'm not done learning. It's just because it's in a book doesn't mean like, well, that's done. No more narwhals for me. I'm still learning. In fact, there's so much that has been discovered about the narwhal just since 2018 that I'm kicking myself I didn't get a chance to put in the book, but that I also want to explore further, and who knows, maybe I'll come up with different metaphors, from different life occurrences. I didn't also write anything about the pandemic in this book. This was all before the pandemic. So that might affect, the future, that kind of thing. But for me, it was just, what are the things I was envisioning it. It started out first as just being a record for my kids, who were 6 and 9 at the time. And then I realized, oh, I should probably write this to a slightly bigger audience. But then even that bigger audience was just one. I was just picturing like kind of a really good friend. And how would I talk about these plants and animals to a friend? And that's hopefully that kind of, and there was animals and plants that I just either wanted to keep for myself, whatever reason, or I didn't feel like I could talk longer than maybe 2 minutes about it. And then that was just easy to push to the side. So these were truly the things that I was just bubbling over with this kind of hopefully contagious energy that I wanted to share with other people. And to me, that was how I separated it out. But I will also say, as a segue to your question for Ross, is that I cried, this is called the, World of Wonders. I think I cried on every single essay as I was writing it, out of joy, out of memories that I kind of forgot about, that I hadn't brought myself to think about, or even to name before, that kind of thing. So it wasn't all a sad cry throughout, but I was laughing and crying to myself as I was kind of knocking these essays out. Anyway, so that's something that I think people maybe wouldn't realize with me. How about you, Ross? Did you ever make yourself cry through any of the Book of Delights?
I don't know if I did. It's funny because I'm thinking about this new project I'm working on, and like it wasn't while I was writing, but I was.
You're probably crying all the time with this new one.
I was listening to the soundtrack to The Wiz, and I was just like,
Is it Home? What is that Diana Ross song? Is that Home?
Home, yeah, God, and the one on you know, from the movie, that her version and her performance of it is just like, you know, so beautiful.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But to make it better is that I was crying about Be a Lion.
I know what?
Be a Lion. The
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, this is a deep, those of you tuning in, this is a deep you know, focus in on, this is like a therapy session here for Rob. Like therapy, like
Be a Lion.
yeah.
But how was the question? What was the question about the delights? If
You make others cry. You made me cry with Book of Delight. You made me cry with Catalog. Did you cry, I guess, as you were composing any of these, or just, I don't know. Well,
yeah.
cry, Ross.
I don't know if those, I can't remember actually, in the process of writing those. Though that being said, yeah, I can't remember about in the process of writing this. It's so interesting, you know. And you know, it's funny, I'm working on this basketball book with my friend Noah, and I actually have this sort of, we have this little thing going on about crying, you know, because for years I didn't know how to cry. And that was not, Noah was not afflicted in this way. And we kind of go through this, and I sort of, you know, trying to like tussle with that. But the process of composing those pieces, it's such a good question. I don't know, but it's also a good question because I feel like what I'm working on now is so like raw in a certain kind of way, that maybe the feeling is that in the process of working through or working toward being able to even like put it to language requires a certain kind of I don't know, emotional something, you know, or but yeah. So just say, I mean, you can kind of tell that I can't even quite articulate. I'll just say that I can't quite articulate the thing yet. But those pieces, they move me, you know, from the delights, they move me, and they're really interesting to me. And that was actually a thing I was curious about. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I, in terms of like sort of selection and how do you choose and all that stuff, and that thing of like when you were saying they remain exciting or curious to you. And these pieces from the delights, they remain exciting and curious to me. Like I read them, and it's nice because in my book, there's 102 essays. So there's some that like the ones that I just read, I have not, I probably haven't read those in months, you know, and to read them and be like, oh, I like that. That's good. You know,
I know, I've read with you enough times that, and I know this is an effect. You genuinely are cracking yourself up when you're reading some of these, you know, and I love that. I think I could speak for Roskay fans, you know, it is because I've been in the audience and you've read, when you're laughing at your own thing, it's not like insert laughter here, you know what I mean? Like you genuinely are remembering this kind of funny memory, and you can tell when people are doing that and when it's not. And with you, it's always genuine. So I guess what I would say is like, did you the converse part of that? Did you find yourself like kind of chuckling to yourself out loud? Like I know, you know, if you're writing,
hell yeah. And that's sort of, and that's sort of the thing. Like, and that's a thing that I think is actually kind of an interesting thing. Like, you know, so I'm 46 years old, and I'm working on like, and I'm like, you know, still kind of trying to come to terms with what kind of writer, whatever, I'm trying to figure out how to write. And the more I kind of like, I don't know what you call it, but I'm learning how to be like, no, you got to write what you love.
Yes.
You got to write what you love, and you need to read, you know, and that is sort of like, you know, I have things that are interesting to me, and things that are interesting to me are not interesting to everyone. And that is such a good thing, you know, so that
thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So that there's moments where I'm like, man, that is, when I'm writing it and I feel it, that's so fucking good. That's so fucking good. And there are other people who will be like, that is stupid. And that is a good thing, you know, that is a really good thing. And so that's one of the things I feel like trying to figure out. It's coming to being, I was just having a long conversation with my buddy Walton about this, like coming into a place of like where we are able to sort of understand the expectation of something, and be like, okay, that's one thing. But there's this other thing, which is like, what do you want to read? You know, so that when you're reading something, you're like, oh, that was pretty good. That's right. That was pretty good.
Yeah, you're putting yourself, I think that's exactly it. You nail it. I think we're kin in that way of putting the energy that we want out there in the world, putting the writing that we want out there in the world, insisting on it, even if, and especially when people are like, nah, not funny, you know, or no, not interesting. I mean, like, are you kidding me? For my book, like, if I listen to the little devil on my shoulder that says like, Aimee, nobody cares about a narwhal, an axolotl, or, you know, I've told you, I've been talking to you, you know me, I've been dropping axolotl information in our conversations for like a decade.
Yeah.
That's not because, oh, I'm planning a book. That's just because I freaking love axolotls. You know what I mean? And for me, it was slightly different growing up. There was just no Asian woman depicted with any sort of smile on their face, with any sort of, even just walking outside, just being, you know, that kind of thing. So it's not like I wrote these one day and they were published. You know, that's 20 years of being told, no, not interested, not great. I'm going to put out the same white guy outside in nature all the time. And I'm just, you know, there just comes a point where I'm like, no, you're going to hear from me. I'm going to keep talking about how I love axolotls. I'm going to talk about narwhals. I'm going to keep doing this. And I'm also going to put a girl in there that's smiling. And all my author photos are going to have a giant smile on my face. And you're not going to take that joy away from me. I'm going to insist on it. And I'm glad that you're telling me not to, because I'm just going to insist on it more. And that's a good thing. You know what I mean? In some ways, like it's a good thing, because I don't think, had I had that resistance, I would have been, well, maybe I would have. I was going to say, like, it just fanned the fire even more for me to be like, I'm again, like, you know this, I wrote this book for my kids. I never thought that, because I had been told by so many publishers, by so many editors, not interested, not interested. There's no drama. Nobody died. You're not addicted to anything. Where's the drama? And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to write what I love. And this is going to be a record of what I love on this planet for my kids. And, you know, now hundreds and thousands of people have been proving those editors wrong, you know, that no, these stories need to be told. So that's not a humble brag. That's just is, you know, that kind of thing. That's just what happened, because you and I are insisting to write about what we love.
Yeah,
I think people will pick up on that more than not, you know.
Yep. I love that. That's the thing. Like, I love this. I love the axolotl. I love the narwhal. You know, I love my kids. I love. You know, it's kind of like that's a legitimate, more than legitimate, obviously. That's a beautiful. That's the engine. You know. That's the engine.
And I think a lot of times someone asked in the question, you know, how do you start, or can you talk about nature, like the role nature plays? I mean, I think I don't have like a set exercise that I do to myself, and I'm pretty sure you don't, but just like kind of what, and this is nature. This is, even if you're not writing about nature, just write what you love. The audience will come with you. I think it's just so palpable, because why? It's so contagious. I don't know jack spread about basketball, you know what I mean? And I know your book, Beholding, is not about basketball. It's so much more. And that love is in there. So that even if I were to see like Ross Gay wrote a book about basketball, my immediate thought is not going to be yuck for many reasons. It's not going to be yuck because, you know, you're one of my dearest. But because I know that when Ross Gay puts his name to something, it's going to showcase a whole litany of what you love. And I'm gonna feel like I traveled without ever leaving my little rainbow room here. You know what I mean? So I want to be taken on that journey as long as I have a guide who is insisting on love. And
That's, I mean, yeah, that's a kind of, I think that's maybe where we should end. Like, is it a book about love? You
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And that doesn't not at all like foreclose the possibility of any subject.
Yeah.
It doesn't. But the question of like, is it a book about love?
Yeah, there you go.
That's
the prompt right there.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you, Aimee. It's so good to see you again.
So good to see you.
Yeah.
And for those listening, we're gonna be back and chatting again in about an hour, in a couple hours. Tune in at Iowa. Then we're just having one long lunch conversation here together.
Yeah. Thank you, Virginia Fest, for the book. Yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks for bringing us.
Yes, please bring us back together.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ross and Aimee. And I wish we could have all been in the same room so you could have seen us strike our hearts in glee and love. This has just been a wonderful conversation. And for those of everyone who is watching, if you have not read these books, we encourage you to rush out right now. We have links at vabook.org, or you can buy them from your local independent bookseller. And you can also check out other events in the all virtual 2021 Virginia Festival of the Book at vabook.org. And especially for those of you who want to rewatch this conversation, like me, we will post a recap at vabook.org/watch. Aimee, Ross, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.